Hi everybody, this is Courtney with Fiber Fox Studios, and today we're going to be working on pattern number 35. When I originally designed this, I was thinking a border, so that's what I'm showing back here. On this other sample is I'm showing it used as a border on a project that I'm working on. This is going to be a pillow. So that is what it will look like used as a border. This is actually pattern number 11, and that I did last week for a tutorial for you guys, and then that inspired pattern number 35, which is more of a border style, but of course you can continue to work it up for multiple repeats, and that's what it would look like if you moved up. This is 2 repeats tall on this particular sample, and this is what you'll be seeing in the video. You can use it as a border on a blanket or something like this. This is a large square that I'm doing. I'm not quite finished over here, but on this side right here, this is going all the way through the 17 rows. It's done in a multiple of 13 plus 4. And you will be able to find this not only on the Mosaic Monday playlist, but on the playlist that's specifically for the patterns done in a multiple of 13 plus 4. So I talked about this last week in the video, and I just want to mention again, I am separating out the different patterns into same multiple playlists. So if it's a 12 plus 4 like last week, those are found on a multiple of 12 playlist. If it's a 13 plus 4 and there is another 13 plus 4 pattern, you can find that on the same playlist. So it'll pair up perfectly with that pattern. No extra math or anything like that to do. So you can use it in a lot of different ways. And that's why I wanted to show you, another sample where you can see another option, another way that you can use it. So you're going to need at least 2 colors of yarn to get started. We're going to be working, I'm going to work flat on camera, but you can work flat or in the round. The crochet hook that I'm using is always linked down in the description for you guys, along with all the yarn information on my samples and what I'm using in the video, which is this right here. So we're going to jump in and get started now. Grab your supplies and we'll be back in just a moment to work row 1. So you're going to get your starting chain ready. If you're working flat, you're going to be chaining out in the multiple of 13 and then adding 4 stitches onto the end. If you're working in the round, you are just going to chain in your multiple of 13, and then you will slip stitch to the very first chain you made to form a ring, and then you begin following the repeats given in this video, starting in that same stitch that you slip stitch into. For the rest of us working flat, if you're wanting to follow along with me, I've chained a total of 43, which is 3 repeats of the 13 plus 4 chains added on to the end. So now we're going to begin row 1. If you're not ready, continue getting your starting chain set up and then meet back up with me to work row 1. Row 1 begins now, and we begin by working here into the second chain from our hook. So we're going to be skipping the first chain and going right here to the second, and that's where we're going to do our traditional single crochet. So we have to do our 2 setup rows to begin our project. So traditional single crochet means you go under the V. So a normal single crochet. From here, our repeat for row 1 is all worked in the back loop only. So we're going to be doing our single crochets, but this time all of our repeat stitches will be worked just the same way. When you're doing a single crochet, you're going to pick up your back loop of the stitch. So you're only on one side of the stitch. And that's what we're going to work into. And we just do our single crochet like normal from there. We pull up our loop and then grab and pull through the 2 and finish out. So now we're going to move to the next stitch, picking up that back loop. So you're going to do one of the single crochets in each and every single stitch all the way down the row. And then we'll meet back up for the very last stitch in the row. But this is all you need to do for this row's repeat. So we'll be back in just a moment to end the row together. We're now back and we're at the end of the row. You'll see you have one stitch left, and that's what we're going to work together. So we're going to now do a traditional single crochet in the stitch. So that means we're going under that V. We want to be completely into the stitch so that we can work it. I'm trying to stretch it out. Hopefully y'all can tell. So we just do our single crochet like normal, and that's how we're going to work every single final stitch in all of your rows, for those of you working flat anyway. So now we're going to be moving on to row number 2, and we're going to be switching over to color B for row 2. We're now moving on to row 2. This is all we have right now, is our starting row. So we're going to go here into this first stitch. Now you'll notice this little side bump, that's our turning chain. And in the rest of our rows, we're just going to have that little bump there on the side from our chain 1 that we'll do as we move up. But you want to scoot that down out of the way and make sure you're going into this first stitch. Really important to maintain your count. So we're going to go into this first stitch. Now we need to just join on our color B. This is how you'll be joining on all of your rows, the new color yarn that you're using. You'll do this exact join. So you go there in the very first stitch, and then you can grab your new color of yarn. So my color B is going to be this light yellow. And you can do a slip knot, or you can just add it on and pull up this little loop. Now we're going to chain 1. And that's where I go ahead and let my tail fall out of the way. And then we need to go back into the same exact first stitch. So we're going back into that stitch. So we're in the same stitch. And then we can grab and pull up a loop and finish out a single crochet like normal. So the beginning of our row always has a traditional single crochet going under the V. And the last stitch in the row has the same. Now our repeat for row number 2 is super simple. We're going to be working our single crochets again, and we know that we'll work our single crochets in the back loop only. So you go right there in that next stitch and pick up only that back loop and just finish out doing a normal single crochet. From there, it's just the placement of our stitch that matters. So we're just placing our back loop only single crochet in all these stitches. Throughout the rest of the tutorial, I'll just call these single crochets, and you will know that when we're working the repeat, we're always working single crochets in the back loop only. So just keep that in mind as we're working. If you're not really experienced with mosaic, trying it for the first time, just remember all of our repeat stitches are worked this way, and you'll be fine when you're doing a single crochet. Anyway, I'll show you guys how we do the double crochets when we get to the next row. We are now moving on to row 3. You're going to be working in color A for this row. Row 3's repeat begins immediately, and that repeat begins by doing 2 single crochets over these next 2 stitches. So remember, this is our repeat stitch, so it's the back loop only. So there's our first, so there's number 1 and number 2. Now we will do 3 double crochets over these next 3 stitches. So I'm going to show you how you work your double crochets. So we just wrap our yarn like normal, identify our next stitch, and we're going to slide down 2 rows below, picking up that front loop that we left by doing back loop only single crochets. So now we just grab and pull up a loop, grab and pull through 2, and grab and pull through 2. So just like a normal double crochet from there. It's just our position and how we're laying this over that makes it mosaic. So we go here to the next one. We've got to do a total of 3. There's number 2. Here's our next one. Number 3. So now if we want to Double check and make sure we know where our next stitch is before we move on. All you will need to do from here is just fold your stitches back. Each double crochet we make takes up one stitch back here on our row. So there's my 3, 1, 2, 3. When I put this back in place, it covers those up. So now we're moving on with our repeat. Our repeat continues with 4 single crochets over the next 4 stitches. So there's number 1, number 2, number 3, and number 4. Now we're going to work 3 double crochets. Identify my next stitch. There's 1. Here's number 2. And number 3. Oops. There we go. Now we will end our repeat by doing 1 single crochet right here into this next stitch. So that ends our repeat for row number 3. So let's recap. Row 3's repeat began over here with 2 single crochets, 3 double crochets, 4 single crochets, 3 double crochets, and we end with 1 single crochet. So we're going to start back over and begin working the start of this repeat all over again. So that's all you're going to do over and over on down your row. We're going to do that together now. So our repeat starts again immediately with 2 single crochets, 1 and 2, 3 double crochets, there's number 1, number 2, number 3, four single crochets, 1, 2, 3, and number 4, 3 double crochets, there's number 1, number 2, and number 3. We end our repeat by doing 1 single crochet into this next stitch. So remember, you will just start back over at the beginning of your repeat and keep working that exact set of stitches over and over on down your row. We'll be back in just a moment to do the row end together, because I'm going to show you guys how we will handle all of our row ends next. We're now here at the end of row number 3. You will notice that you will have 2 stitches left at the end of each and every row. So in this next stitch, we're going to be working whatever our repeat begins with, because I've just ended a repeat and now my repeat needs to start over for 1 stitch, and then we will do a traditional single crochet here in the very last stitch of the row. So for row number 3, my repeat begins with a single crochet. So I'll be working a single crochet here in this stitch. And then I will do a traditional single crochet going under that V completely in the stitch here in the last. So that's how we'll handle all of our row ends. Whatever that row's repeat starts with, that is what you're going to be doing in your second to last stitch. When you do this, it will mean that your row end and your row beginning will match up. They'll be completely even. So as you notice here, we have a single crochet, our traditional, right here. And then we have 2 of our single crochets in our repeat. End of the row, 2 of our single crochets for the repeat, traditional single crochet in the very last. So it ends up being even when you work it like that. So we'll be back in just a moment for row number 4. Here's what your work will look like after completing row 3. We're now moving on to row 4, so please join on color B. Row 4's repeat begins by doing 1 single crochet into this next stitch. One double crochet, three single crochets. There's 1, 2, and number 3. 1 double crochet, two single crochets. There's 1 and number 2. 1 double crochet, three single crochets, here's number 1, number 2, and number 3. And we will end the repeat by doing 1 double crochet right here in this next stitch. So that ends our repeat for row number 4. So let's recap what we've done. Row 4's repeat began over here with 1 single crochet, 1 double crochet, 3 single crochets, 1 double crochet, 2 single crochets, 1 double crochet, 3 single crochets, and we end with 1 double crochet. So you'll start back over at the beginning of the repeat and keep working that exact set of stitches all the way down your row. You're going to notice essentially we're just kind of boxing out in between our existing double crochets, framing them, I think is how I normally refer to that, but it's a pretty easy row to work, so you can pause and meet back up when you are ready for row number 5. We are now moving on to row 5, and you will be working in color A. Row 5's repeat begins by doing 2 single crochets over these next 2 stitches. There's number 1 and number 2. One double crochet, three single crochets, 1, 2, and 3. 2 double crochets, there's 1 and number 2. 3 single crochets, 1, 2, and 3. 1 double crochet right here in this next stitch, and 1 single crochet will end our repeat here in this next stitch. So that ends our repeat for row number 5. So let's take a look and recap what we've done. Row 5's repeat began with 2 single crochets, 1 double crochet, 3 single crochets, 2 double crochets, 3 single crochets, 1 double crochet, and we end with 1 single crochet. So you will start back over with your 2 single crochets and work that same set of stitches. Then we'll be back for row number 6 when you're ready. Row 6 begins now, and we will be working in color B for this row. Our repeat for row number 6 begins by doing 3 single crochets over these next 3 stitches. Here's number 1, 2, and 3. 1 double crochet, 6 single crochets, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. 1 double crochet, And we will end our repeat by doing 2 single crochets over these next 2 stitches. Here's number 1 and number 2. And that ends our repeat for row 6. So let's recap what we've done. Row 6's repeat began over here with 3 single crochets, 1 double crochet, 6 single crochets, 1 double crochet, and we end with 2 single crochets. So you'll start back over with your 3 single crochets and keep working that exact set of stitches all the way down your row. And right here, I'm using a stitch marker to mark my final stitch of the repeat. You can mark your last stitch or your first stitch of the repeat to help you keep track. That way you can read your work instead of having to refer to the video over and over. Just a little tip to help you guys out. And we'll be back when you're ready for row 7. Row 7 begins now. We're going to work in color A for this row. Row 7's repeat begins by doing 1 double crochet here in this next stitch. Identify and slide down. 3 single crochets over the next 3 stitches. Here's 1, 2, and number 3. 6 double crochets. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and number 6. And now we will end our repeat by doing 3 single crochets over these next 3 stitches. Here's number 1, 2, and number 3. So that ends our repeat for row 7. So let's recap what we've done. Row 7's repeat began over here with 1 double crochet, 3 single crochets, 6 double crochets, and we end with 3 single crochets. So you'll be starting back over at the beginning of the repeat and keep working this exact set of stitches all the way down your row. We'll be back for row 8 whenever you're ready. Here's what your work will look like after completing row 7. We're now moving on to row 8, and you will join on color B this time. Row 8's repeat will begin with 1 single crochet worked here in this next stitch. 1 double crochet, 10 single crochets worked over the next 10 stitches. Here's number 1. Sorry about that. Number 2. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and number 10. And we will end our repeat by doing 1 double crochet right here in this very next stitch. That ends our repeat for row number 8. So let's recap what we've done. Row 8's repeat began over here with 1 single crochet, 1 double crochet, 10 single crochets, and we end with 1 double crochet. So you'll start back over with the single crochet and keep working on down the row, repeating the same set of stitches as many times as you need to. We'll be back in just a moment for row number 9. We're about to move on to row 9, where we will be working in color A again. For those of you who want like a shorter border type deal, you can actually stop here at row 8 after completing that, and that could be a border or a separator design in between other patterns that you're putting together. So I just wanted to point that out. Now we're continuing on. The total pattern is designed with 17 rows, I believe it is. So we've got a little ways to go before I will be done, but that's another way that you can kind of chop this pattern down. You just work the first 8 rows, and that in itself is a really pretty, and I think it would make a really pretty separator pattern or border. So now we're going to move on to row 9. So join on color A and let's get started. Row 9's repeat begins by completing 1 double crochet, 3 single crochets, 1, 2, and 3, 6 double crochets, 1, number 2, 3, 4, 5, and number 6. Three single crochets worked over the next 3 stitches will end our repeat for this row. We're going to do 1, 2, and number 3. So that ends our repeat for row 9. So let's recap what we've done. Row 9's repeat began with 1 double crochet, 3 single crochets, 6 double crochets, and we end with 3 single crochets. So you'll start back over at the beginning of the repeat and keep working that exact set of stitches all the way down your row, and then we'll meet back up whenever you are ready for row number 10. We're now moving on to row 10. You will be working in color B for this row. Row 10's repeat begins by working 3 single crochets. Here is number 1. Two, and number 3. 1 double crochet, 6 single crochets, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. 1 double crochet, and we end the repeat by doing 2 single crochets over these next 2 stitches. So here's number 1 and number 2. So that ends our repeat for row 10. So let's recap. Row 10's repeat began over here with 3 single crochets, 1 double crochet, 6 single crochets, 1 double crochet, and we end with 2 single crochets. So you'll start back over at the beginning of the repeat and keep working that exact set of stitches over and over. We'll be back when you're ready for row 11. Row 11 begins now, and we will be working in color A for this row. Row 11's repeat begins with 2 single crochets, there's number 1 and number 2. 1 double crochet, 3 single crochets, 1, 2, and number 3. 2 double crochets, there's 1 and number 2. Now we're going to work 3 single crochets. There's number 1, 2, and number 3. 1 double crochet, and 1 single crochet will end our repeat. So now let's recap what we've done for row 11. Row 11's repeat began with 2 single crochets, 1 double crochet, 3 single crochets, 2 double crochets, 3 single crochets, 1 double crochet, and 1 single crochet. So start back over at the beginning of the repeat and keep working that same set of stitches. We'll be back in just a moment for row number 12. We are moving on to row 12 and we will be working in color B for this row. Row 12's repeat begins by doing 1 single crochet, one double crochet, three single crochets, one, two, and number 3. One double crochet, two single crochets, one and number 2, one double crochet, three single crochets, one, two, and number 3. And one double crochet worked here in this next stitch will end our repeat. So that's the end of our repeat for row 12. So let's recap. Row 12's repeat began over here with 1 single crochet, 1 double crochet, 3 single crochets, 1 double crochet, 2 single crochets, 1 double crochet, 3 single crochets, and we end with 1 double crochet. So you'll start back over and keep working this exact set of stitches all the way down your row. We'll be back for row 13 whenever you are ready. We're now moving on to row 13 and we will be working in color A for this row. Row 13's repeat begins by doing 2 single crochets, number 1 and number 2. One double crochet, three single crochets, 1, 2, and 3, 2 double crochets, 1, and number 2. Three single crochets, 1, 2, and number 3. One double crochet, and we will end our repeat by doing 1 single crochet right here in this next stitch. So that ends our repeat for row 13. So let's recap. Row 13's repeat began over here with 2 single crochets, 1 double crochet, 3 single crochets, 2 double crochets, 3 single crochets, and 1 double crochet will end that repeat. So you'll start back over with your 2 single crochets and keep working all the way down your row. Row 14 begins now. We're going to be working in color B for this row. Row 14's repeat begins by doing 3 single crochets over these next 3 stitches. Here is number 1. 2, and number 3. One double crochet, six single crochets, one, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. One double crochet, and we'll end the repeat by doing 2 single crochets over these next 2 stitches. There's 1 and number 2. So that ends the repeat for row 14. So let's recap. Row 14's repeat began over here with 3 single crochets, 1 double crochet, 6 single crochets, 1 double crochet, and we end with 2 single crochets. So you'll start back over the beginning of the repeat and keep working. Then we'll meet back up for row 15 in just a moment. Row 15 begins now, and we're going to be working in color A for this row. Row 15's repeat begins by doing 1 double crochet, 3 single crochets, 1, 2, 3, 6 double crochets, there's number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and number 6. Three single crochets worked over the next 3 stitches will end our repeat for row 15. So here's number 1, number 2, and number 3. So that ends our repeat. So let's recap. Row 15's repeat started over here when we did 1 double crochet, 3 single crochets, 6 double crochets, and we end with 3 single crochets. So you'll start back over at the beginning of the repeat, and then we'll meet back up when you're ready for row 16. Row 16 is beginning now, and we will be working in color B for this row. Row 16's repeat begins with 1 single crochet, 1 double crochet, 10 single crochets over the next 10 stitches, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. And we will do 1 double crochet right here in this next stitch to end our repeat. So that ends row 16's repeat. So let's recap what we've done. Row 16 began over here when we did 1 single crochet, 1 double crochet, 10 single crochets, and we end with 1 double crochet. So you just start back over at the beginning of the repeat and keep working that exact set of stitches all the way down your row, and then we will be back for row 17, which is our final row. We're moving on to row 17, which is our final row, and we will be ending by working in color A. Row 17's repeat begins by doing 2 single crochets. Here's number 1 and number 2. We will now work 10 double crochets over the next 10 stitches. Here's number 1. Number 2. Three. 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and number 10. One single crochet here in this next stitch will end our repeat for row 17. So let's recap what we've done. Row 17's repeat began by doing 2 single crochets, 10 double crochets, and we end with 1 single crochet. So you'll start back over with the 2 single crochets, keep working on down the rest of your row, then we will meet back up to talk about how you can move up if you're not going to use this as a separator pattern or as a border. I'll show you what to do or tell you what to do to keep using this pattern in a larger section in a project. So we'll be back in just a moment. So here's what you will have after you've completed row 17. I just really do think this is a great border option, but I do think it looks pretty cool when you move up for that additional repeat of the entire design as well. So if you're wanting to do that, you're wanting to grow this out taller for a bigger project, you will rewind back to row 2 and complete rows 2 through 17 as many times as you would like. If you want to use it as a border, you of course just join on and you'll be working essentially in the round to do a border on a blanket or another project that you have. I certainly hope that you have enjoyed this tutorial, and if you did, please give me a thumbs up and leave a comment down below. I do appreciate you guys as always. You guys know that, and I really appreciate all the kind words and support that you guys show me, and that's why I keep doing these week after week. Until next time, bye for now.